Well, I want to thank you all for joining us. I'm Mark Schumacher, CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, and this is one of our weekly webinars. And today, once again, we're drilling down. We're getting really granular on something that's critically important to every business, to everybody who's watching this. Because if you can say that your company is a great place to work, that's going to be a huge hedge against losing people and attrition, and also a great way to lure people in as well. So we're going to really drill down on what does that mean? How can you make sure that you are providing a great place to work? And what are some of those elements? Got a great panel, but before we start, I want to, of course, do a little housekeeping here. You will notice at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A tab. I know there's a chat tab, but the Q&A tab is what I want to lead you to. If you have questions, pop them in there. We'll do our best to get to those before this hour is out. So I thank you for that. And secondly, I want to also mention to you that these webinars are available on demand, myhfa.org/webinar. You can find the entire library. It is there for you on every subject you can imagine to help you with your business. And I also, as always, want to thank Synchrony. They are the thought leader sponsor of our education programs here at HFA. So we appreciate that as well. But let's dig in. Got a great panel. I want to introduce, first of all, Julian Lute. Julian is Senior Manager and Strategic Advisor for Great Places to Work. So he has a lot of experience in innovative leadership. That's a big part of what this is going to be all about. And so he is somebody who's dealt with a lot of Fortune 100 companies. So Julian, love having you here. Appreciate that. We also have Justin Padden. He's joining us. He's Director of Sales and Training at Georgia Furniture Mart in the Atlanta area. He's been with us before. And Justin, we appreciate you being here as well. And also we're being joined by Olga Tua. She's the Human Resource Director for Eldorado Furniture down in Florida. And she's had 20 years of what we're calling progressive experience in, I love this, human capital management. That's what it's called. So that's where we're going with. First of all, I thank you all for being here. In kind of thinking about this and getting prepared for today, I thought a great place to start would be just to ask you each, and I'll start, Julian, we'll start with you, and then I'd love the other two to pipe in. And just out of the gates here, what are the key elements, the 3 or 4 things that make a company a great place to work? What just give us those highlights. We'll drill down in a bit, but what are those?
For sure. Thank you for having us. And Mark, really enjoying myself so far. Thank you for the intro. So the things that are important, right? We believe every relationship and every workplace is built on trust. So we start with trust. And if you think about what trust really means, you're talking about credible management, right? So your leaders, you believe in what they say and their actions match their words. We believe that respect, how do you make sure that you're including employees' voices and perspectives and their own experience and how we deliver our work? So respect is another major component of what we know creates a great workplace. And the last, is really about fairness. How do you make sure everybody has an opportunity to be developed, to grow, to move within the business, to maximize their own human potential? That's another major thing that managers have a role in playing. The last couple of things are really about how do people believe their jobs, help the company or help the world. So there's a pride in the work that they're doing. And then how do people work together? So this sense of camaraderie that you and I, we're all on the same page. We're all moving towards the same goals and targets. Those are some of the key, components of a great workplace through our 30 years of research that if you hone in on those, you're bound to be doing something right.
So Olga, let me ask you to kind of jump in there now. He's given us really 5 kind of major areas, and in your experience, where do you see those building blocks? I mean, man, there's some heavy lifting in there.
Communication is the key. I think that everything kind of encompasses around communication, right? Sharing with your employees the direction of the company, sharing with your people, our growth opportunities, sharing when you're not doing so well, and maybe we can get together and figure out a way how to make it better. Communicating, the goals, getting feedback, not just from the company to the employee, but from, the internal customer to you as a business leader of what's happening on the floor, right? What's happening with clients and customers. And so the entire piece of communication is really one of the driving forces of that.
And it's interesting because the word that as soon as you started talking, it popped into my head that you could put over the top of that whole thing is transparency. Because when I think about getting back to what Julian just said, when I think about how you build trust, respect, fairness, camaraderie, all that sort of stuff. I mean, if transparency is not a big chunk of what you're doing, then nobody's going to get to those things. That's awesome. Justin, give us an idea too. What do you think are some of the, just out of the gates here, some of the most important elements you would say for creating a great place to work?
Well, I think these guys nailed it. So, no, I would say, we always say, it's not where you work, it's who you work with. And if you can't come into work and get to know the people that you work with in the transparency and the trust factor, the other thing too is the vision, where we're at, where we're going, what are we doing, so that they have the buy-in and they have the understanding. We live by three things: is it's got to be good for the employee, got to be good for the company, got to be good for the customer. Without those three things, then somebody feels like there's a missing piece to it. But the love and respect, communication, and culture is the ultimate competitive advantage. So, when you can work through those things and work towards it, then it creates a fun work environment.
One little aside, just to mention out of the gates here, and this is something that Olga, when you were talking, it made me think about is there is one major retailer in this country, super successful, that on their intranet, you can see anybody that works there. I don't care what department you're in, can see real-time KPIs on everything from how fast people are able to get through picking up furniture and I mean everything. And so it's one of those things where it's not just, you're getting it sort of in little drips and drabs. You're getting the full picture. And, so you now have got that whole point of saying, okay, wow, I must be trusted because, I've got this access. Julian, talk a little bit about transparency before we go any further, because that's a great thread through this whole thing. And I saw you nodding, so I know that this is something that's super key.
Oh yeah, when best workplace leaders, they lead with transparency. They have no qualms about sharing, as Justin said, where the vision, where the company's going. As Olga said, what you know and what you don't know, what you hope to know, and how you get that feedback. So the best leaders lead with transparency. It's they build the trust, or they believe that if you're in our organization, we trust you, and it's yours to kind of take from there. So that's a great signal when you walk into a great workplace, that people are open with information and people have a very clear sense of where the business is heading and how they help to get there.
Okay, so let me, I find this really fascinating because I know that we work on this internally here at HFA as well. So let's go this path first with all of these elements we've talked about. And this time I'll start, Olga, I'll let you start this one. So how do you involve the team, everybody, in the creation of great place to work? Because this isn't just, hey, upper management's got this thing, got to figure this thing out and lay it out. So how do you best, because that's a question that came in, how do you best involve the team in the creation of this process?
Part of that is, and I think, Julian, you mentioned a little bit of this, them understanding what's their piece of the puzzle in the big puzzle, right? And I think it goes back to, letting them know that whether you're, moving a piece of furniture, you're cleaning the bathroom, right? You're selling to an executive, like it doesn't matter what level you are in, you are part of that puzzle. And without you, it doesn't work, right? The clock doesn't tick if there's a little wheel that's missing in that clock. So having that sense of like ownership of every little piece that you're doing is as important as the person that's sitting on that chair, in the board chair, right? Is part of that process of getting the buy-in of everyone to follow that and kind of continue that execution of what you're trying to achieve.
So Justin, I want you to pick up on this then. So how then, because I think it's a great point. So how in your business do you help your team understand their role and how it does fit based upon what Olga's talking about?
One thing that we do to kind of help with the transparency is, like, we have a weekly manager with all the department heads. And we talk about, all the pressing issues or different things, and from the operation side, from the warehouse side. So kind of like what Olga was saying was, those puzzle pieces, where do you fit in? What is it? What's expected for you? The big thing that I found is like the inclusion, right? Everyone wants to be involved. You want to have inclusion part of it. So as you're involved in something, where, like she was saying, cleaning the bathrooms or cleaning this, that's part of the customer experience when they come in. So when everyone feels like they're included in an overall picture, then you have that buy-in and they feel like they have self-worth. And when I'm coming in, I'm part of something and I'm doing something. I'm not just cleaning the bathroom. I'm part of a team. I'm part of a picture, a vision. So Like some of the examples of that, is all the pressing stuff that's been going on, the transparency from the furniture, right? We're overstocked on this or that, or how are we going to get out of this? Well, how do we play that role and who plays a part in it? And then dissecting it, breaking it down, and then, dividing it up and, getting through that.
Okay, I got to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to throw this one to Julian. So here's the thing though, and I've seen this happen. I think we all have team members that also, they want to be involved, but a lot of times want to know everything. And so you've got this, it's a little bit of a fine line, right? Keeping people focused in their lane and their role without getting everybody in everybody's business, if you will. And I don't mean that in a non-transparency way. I'm just talking about just operationally speaking. So where's the line, Julian? How do you make sure that you're getting people involved without it being something that actually slows the business down?
I've just had this experience with with someone that I was working with. I always come back to the question, what does this information, how does this help you do your job better? Or how does this help you get to what you need? And sometimes it's just, I need to know because I just, I'm a strategic thinker as well. So I talk to my leader and say, hey, if you give me the context, I can understand what's going on. And so I try to get down to that level of understanding, like, do you need this just for context, or do you need this to get your job done? And we're going to prioritize getting your job done. We will find ways to make sure you have the context, and hopefully that's enough for you. But let's get to, how will this help you get what you need to get done? And then when we start there, we're able to have a different kind of conversation. It doesn't always work, but that's my typical starting place.
Olga, I want you to weigh in on this too, because I think anybody on this call who manages anybody has seen this happen. And I'm not saying somebody's intentions are bad. It's just we just have people that, want to, be included, know everything, and that slows everything down. Have you dealt with that, and how do you manage it?
And sometimes a little bit of that is phases, right? Sometimes it's breaking it down to say, listen, we're on phase 1, and this is what phase 1 needs, and this is what we're going to do in phase 1. What you're asking or what you need might be something that we're working on phase 3. When we get there, you'll have that information, or I'll get you more information when we're in that phase. I'm very system and process oriented, so I usually break everything down like in projects and phases, and that's how I usually talk to my team, in the sense that, listen, this is our focus right now. Yes, this piece that we're working on right now is something of a bigger picture, but we can't look at the whole picture until we finish this piece first.
I love that. And I think what I'm hearing, and Justin, you tell me if you're hearing the same thing, is that perhaps by being very clear with people and transparent with them about their role, that less of that's going to happen, because they're going to understand the importance and realize that there's a lot more to what they're doing than just filling a space. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, one thing too is true open door policy. So, hey, you can come in, and a lot of times when we dress things and we go through, in an open forum, we want them to have a voice. But if it's off track or something, then, you don't want to open that Pandora box, but you're like, hey, we can have this conversation, and why don't we have it off the side where it doesn't involve everyone? And then you go down this rabbit hole of all this different stuff. But, if they want to expand on it further, then we can pull them aside and talk on it. But, the same thing is, I love the part of the phases. We got to get here to get to here, and once we do that, and it's that overall vision, this is where we're trying to end, but to get there, we got to get A, B, C.
Well, and that's a great point. And I love the way you guys really kind of took this, because it's really about, if you're being transparent, letting them understand what the big picture looks like, then they're going to understand that this is a process. You're all working your way there, and you don't want to jump 3 steps ahead, to be a part of that process. I get it. I love that very much. Yes, go please.
Because you're working on phase 1, and you might have a goal of what you think phase 3 is going to be. But when you get to phase 2, maybe phase 3 changes a little bit, because what you did in phase 1 and phase 2 is changing what you overall want to get to on phase 3. So you might not even be able to answer that question of tell me the whole thing, because you need to go through that kind of phasing process.
And I'll add, if I could, that, sometimes when people ask questions like that, it can be a symbol of, as a leader, you might want to make sure that, that they trust you, because, you know, if they're asking for a lot of information, especially new employees or folks that are kind of switching teams or kind of coming over and they're asking for a lot of additional information, sometimes you have to just keep showing them, as Olga said, like, look, we've thought about all of these things. We phase this out in this particular way. If you stick with me, you'll see what we're getting towards. And I think that that can diminish as people come to trust the process and understand that we are taking everything into account, as you said, Justin, all the different types of people that are our stakeholders, and we're going to get to that. We haven't forgot that. So we're listening. That's actually sometimes a feedback. Like, are you listening for this? Did you hear that? That's why I'm asking if you're thinking about this.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I think that's super insightful, because you know, you always want to make sure that you're looking in the mirror, right? You're not just saying, well, this is just somebody who's an overambitious, over questioning employee. It might be to like, well, are you really providing them with what they need? Do they truly have what they need? Before we go too much farther, let me ask this, and I'm going to throw this out as a toss up that anybody can jump in on. Because I think before we get any further, is there a way, or should you think anybody watching this everybody watching this runs a company? Is there a way for them to do like an analysis of where they are currently, or, you know, get an idea, you know, okay, are we a great place to work? You know, you talked about all these key areas: trust, respect, fairness, you know, workplace pride, you know, camaraderie, et cetera. But so should I in some way audit what the current situation is? And how do I do that? Because I think that, you know, this is not just, add these things and you're going to become a great place to work. You know, you want to take stock right now. Anybody can jump in first on that one.
And I think part of that is, I think part of that is not just sitting at the round table and figuring it out, right? Part of that is getting out of your office, like going to the showroom, speaking to your cashier, speaking to your salesperson, hearing firsthand, like, what are they living and experiencing with those clients, with the day-to-day, so that you have a better vision on how you're going to take these elements and integrate them into your organization, right? It's not just, I'm going to send an email and get a survey and everyone's going to answer and it's going to be great. It's also having those one-on-one, you know, listening, actual interactions. Sometimes, you know, you get to a leadership position and you're in the office every day, all day, and you kind of lose sight of what's happening at the showroom level, you know, in your store with your people. And it takes you to, you know, get out of your office and do a little drive there and talk to them to really understand what came out of that quote unquote survey that you might have sent on an email.
Guys, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, and through that, I think it's a daily audit, really, Mark, in the sense that, you know, you can build culture. It takes so long to build culture, but you can lose it like that, you know, and if you're not fully aware and in tune and having conversations, you know, I don't think conversations that people just hear what they want to hear. No, it's real conversations, you know, really, how you doing? What do you think? You know, in the transparency and trying to understand where they come from and where they, you know, you come from as well. It's hard right now. You know, people, it's everywhere, you know, inflation and, you know, business is down and all this other stuff, and it's real. And if you don't have those real conversations, then you don't get a real understanding, you know, and I think it just opens the door for that. But it's also with the management too. You know, the managers, where are you at having those conversations? Because, you know, I think Julian was talking about earlier, you know, it starts every day with the leadership, you know, every day having the conversation, every day, you know, because sometimes you turn around and you go, what happened? Well, what happened is we didn't get out of the office, or we didn't have conversations. We're not doing an audit. We think we're doing good. And then all of a sudden, you know.
And I've heard from folks who, you know, they take our survey that we always say that's not enough. You got to triangulate this information with just what Justin and Olga said. Like you have to go on your listening tours. You got to have, you know, your stand-up meetings, you know, and one thing that I think is really important is making it okay for people to share feedback. You know, sometimes people have it and they hold on to it. So I always say, when you're doing stand-ups or you're having meetings with groups, making it okay that people share it publicly, that it's okay, you know, if you can come to me privately, but I want to make sure we have a culture of feedback. So, you know, if I'm asking you in a survey, if I got you in a little focus group, depending on your department, or if I got you in a stand-up meeting, that you can tell me what's going on and I could share with you kind of what I'm seeing as well. So creating that culture of feedback is something that you have to continuously work on and make sure you're getting it in multiple different arenas and ways.
And isn't support key here too? I mean, this isn't just, you know, trying to come up with a, you know, standard number of questions here. It seems to me that if you truly are transparent in your business and everybody knows what their expectations are, isn't it inherent on the leader to walk up to somebody and say, find out how they're doing, but then also say, what can I do to help? What do you need from me to help you, get this job done or succeed, kind of a situation? Isn't that part of what we're talking about too, that availability?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think if you're not going to ask, like we end every meeting, like, hey, does anyone have anything they want to say? Opening it up in the sense of what's the feedback, but also too is don't ask the question if you don't have time or you don't want to hear what that feedback is.
Mhm.
I really ask you, hey, how you doing today? I'm going to pause to really find out, and not because we're rushing. Got to get to this meeting, got to get here. Hey, how you doing? There he goes. He goes again. So yeah, absolutely. Getting the feedback, listening to it, and yeah, how can I help you today? What do you need? I think that goes a long, long ways in any organization.
Being genuine about that, to your point, asking the question, listening, being genuine about actually asking. I think a lot of us, we're like, yeah, I'm fine. Everything is just like an automatic response, right? How are you doing? I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. It's great. It's awesome. Being genuinely like, hey, how are you? Like, how's your family? Like, how's your kids? I heard graduation was last week. How did it go? Um, you know, Truly, really, asking the question, and to your point, listening, waiting for the response.
I think, Olga, if you were with me even going into a store, when I walk up to somebody and say, how you doing? And somebody goes, yeah, I'm good. And I'm going to go, okay, how you doing? I always take that first one, just, okay, you gave me the blow off answer. Now let's get to the real stuff. But I love what you said there, because also you're getting back and you're utilizing things you remember about that person, those connections, right? Those are the questions come from, areas of either concern or just interest. I think that's fabulous. So I find it interesting that a lot of the questions that we get and that we got ahead of this webinar today, revolving around, what are some of the key elements, and people, talk about pay and how that fits into this whole thing. And I find it interesting that the three of you in the first 22 minutes of this webinar have said nothing about compensation. Does that play a role in having a great place to work, or is that just something that's necessary in there, because that's not even been mentioned yet? How does that fit in, and should this be anything that anybody's fixating on?
I'll jump in, because before I started working at Great Place to Work, I would leave for $1 or $2. I would do that, and I know that that's a real thing. So fairness around compensation, having competitive benefits, that's sort of like a baseline. So when people understand that you're going to treat them fair and you're going to do market studies around how you benchmark pay, and you communicate that, which is to Olga's point, like making sure people understand that, people trust that that's happening even if they can't see it, like in the background. But when I go to companies and I listen to their employees talk about what it is, it's the other things. It's everything that Justin said. How interactive is their leader with me? Do people care about involving me in decisions? And then what Olga said about, do I understand what my role is? Do I understand where their business is heading? Compensation is important. You can't not address that, because when you're talking about retail, people, if you have a lot of hourly workers, people know what's happening in the industry, and they'll even pop out and grab another position. If you can't be competitive in these other places, sometimes money is the first thing that people will jump ship for. But I have to say, I've seen people who work at the 50, 60, 75% of the median salary and have no problems about their job, because they know that their employers care about them. They get flexibility when they need that flexibility for whether home or family things come up. There are lots of that they love working with the people that they're with every single day. Like, those things oftentimes take precedent, as long as you're doing kind of what Olga said, which is like communicating your process around how you get to salary and money decisions, how you get to benefit and other decisions that are important to folks with their compensation.
Olga, jump in, because I saw you doing a lot of nodding there. How does comp fit into this whole conversation with you?
I would agree. I think that if you have, a compensation package that's competitive in your market, if you have benefits that are competitive in your market, and that doesn't mean you have to be the 90th percentile of comp, or, offer free benefits for everyone, but you have to be somewhere. I mean, you can't be the 30 percentile either, right? Because they're going to jump really quickly. But if you're fair, right, you're within that, 50, 60, 70% percentile range from a comp and a benefit perspective, that culture of people wanting to stay because they know it matters, because they know it's important, because they know you care for them. They're not just another number on an employee census, right? That makes a huge difference for people. People want to be heard. People want to be seen. People want to know that there's growth opportunities, that I'm going to be able to learn a new skill, that I'm going to be able to, grow in my career. And that could be, laterally, that could be a promotion, that could be, I started as a receptionist and now I'm, the director of IT, right? Those pieces, that's where people stay, right? In our retail space, if you have a competitor that's paying 75 cents, people might jump for 75 cents. I mean, so offering all these other pieces where people have the understanding that they're being taken care of is what's going to make that difference.
Yeah, and Justin, I noticed that the one thing that Julian said is you've got to, you have to be competitive on that level. You don't have to be the 90th percentile, but you got to be competitive there before these other things can really be a part of the conversation. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. We're always analyzing and looking at it. For us, my background's I was a fireman for 8 years, and so I really learned brotherhood and sisterhood and the culture of it. But when I left, it was a number. When I came here, I was like, you know what? It goes back to what I said earlier. It's not where you work, it's who you work with. And yeah, we come to work because we want to get paid, but we want to come and we look at different things like our customer service and warehouse and where are we at? Are we competitive? What's this? But the difference maker, even in the sales is the culture, in the transparent. If you can explain where we're at and this is what it is, and it makes it easier. Yeah, some people leave because of this and that, but our biggest thing is we always ask, what's the best part of your life, the worst part of your life, and how's your heart? And you can ask, hey, how you doing? But what's the best part of your life? And we have a culture club, on Mondays and Fridays, and through that we sit around the circle and we go through of what's going on in your life, what are you dealing with, this, that, and it's amazing what has happened and what's transpired, and just as an example, one of our guys, our sales guys, one of the top producers, kind of negative, came in. He's a leader of our culture club now. And it's unbelievable to see what's transpired through him, So when you come into work, you feel appreciative. You can talk about what's going on. And the other thing too is we're huge on family, right? It's retail, it's tough. Do you have kids? Do you have sporting events? Go, right? Do you have the recital? Work will always be here. But you have milestone events in your family, go. We have coverage. We can figure it out because that's what matters. And, that's been the success for us in the sense of, yeah, we have to staff our business to where we need it.
Right.
Yeah. It's not always yes, but it's yes a lot more than it's no, and then when it's come back, hey, one thing you got to bring back pictures. Tell me how it is. And that coincides with pay and with job satisfaction and everything else.
So, what I'm hearing here too is that this is a key element, clearly, and we've talked a lot about this in the last few months on some of the webinars as well, that clearly this great place to work is a key for the acquisition side, the retention side of employees, et cetera. So this is really the linchpin between both, and particularly at a time when it's been harder to find people. This has probably never been more important. I guess the thing that I'm kind of curious about is that in a couple things here. So we get a lot of questions about managing external factors, in this great place to work. You have to be mindful. This is why it's not so much just formulaic, right? So how do you deal with that? Because there's so much uncertainty out there, right? So you're now dealing with this added pressure, added anxiety of not just the customers, but your team coming to work and feeling this added weight. So, how flexible or what do you do to manage, I guess, through that is really kind of the question that I'm seeing here that has been asked a couple different ways. Julian, maybe you can start on that one.
Yeah, that's it is tough. Like, you can't get around that, the economic environment, sort of politics, just all the things that are happening outside of work, how they kind of creep into work. A few of the things that we see great companies do, or companies that are on that journey, it goes back to the listening. It's like, how do we create space to be able to have a conversation. When things are happening, when there is economic uncertainty, calling it, naming it, and saying, look, we're not quite certain what's going to happen. These are some of the implications. If we do it this way, these are some of the implications if we do it this way. What are you all seeing? Can you all go out? I think something that Olga said about people going out and knowing what their role is. You're on the floor. I need you to be listening. Bring that back. Next Wednesday, we're going to talk about what we've been hearing. Ask this question to everybody that comes in the door. Like, getting people involved in that solutioning, or at least that understanding, is one of the ways that we see our organizations really trying to use the power of their employees, but really being transparent. It goes back there. This is what we're dealing with. I'm not certain what's going to happen in this election. I don't know what's going to happen here, but what we're focused on is our customers, quality, blah, blah, blah. Those things never will change. It doesn't matter who's doing this or who's doing that. We're focused on that. So let's keep our eye on the ball there, and giving people the space to be able to, feel like this is a safe place to be who they are and bring their full selves to work.
And so Olga, do you think that those outside factors are just, what Julian's just saying here is you still keep your eye on the ball with these areas that are so critically important to be a great place to work, but is it just really just more diligence right now? It's harder, right? You've got a little bit of a headwind to try to manage through this.
It is a little harder. To his point, I think actually saying it out loud, helps people understand that you are not oblivious to that it doesn't exist, right? Sometimes I think they think, well, they sit in an office and leadership doesn't really know, and this is what we're dealing with. But once you actually start saying, we know, like, we also hear it, we also know it, we're in this together, like, we realize all these external factors are touching all of us, not only maybe in the workplace, maybe at home, right? Maybe people are struggling financially at home, maybe their spouse lost their job, and we get it, right? So trying to avoid it and not talk about it is the worst thing you can do. I think just tackling it, addressing it straight on, full force, and say, listen, we know this is where we are, this is how we're going to get through this together, and listening to maybe people have ideas, maybe they've heard something of how we could do things a little bit differently, knowing that you're relatable to what they're living as well is important.
Okay. I want to ask and this is a question that came in just a few moments ago. And Justin, I'm going to let you kind of try to tackle this one, because I think I understand where this person's going. The question was, which experience is more important today in this context we're talking about with Great Place to Work? Customer experience or worker experience or team member experience? I think I know what they're talking about there, because we do focus, obviously, in our industry so much on the customer experience. But we're talking about great places to work. Does that make sense, or is it one as equal as the other?
Oh, that's such a loaded question, in the sense of, I think they
Totally.
go.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was hoping Julian was going to get it. That would have been good. I think they go hand in hand. I think without a great work experience, and when you come to work and you don't enjoy what you do, you're not going to give that customer experience, right? It's just another job, it's another day, it's it's another customer. When you come in and you love what you do and you love the people you work with, yeah, we're not perfect, don't get me wrong, we got a lot of issues, but we talk about it, and for us, our big thing is we're faith-led. We pray every morning before work. Pray for the customers, people that come in, that they're going to have a different experience. And I think what that does is it sets the tone for the day for when the customer's going to come in, because you don't know what that customer's experience when they come in, right? It's, when they're coming in, they're dealing with the same thing we're all dealing with. So let's give them something to rave about and create a raving fan. So, so I think to have that experience, you got to have it figured out in the work experience or in the work environment.
Yeah. I love that too, because you're right. If you've got a team that feels, going back to Julian's list, if they feel respected, if they feel like there's camaraderie around them, right? That just emanates. You talked about it from a faith standpoint. It's just human nature, right? When somebody is just emitting that, man, it's like bees to honey. And look, folks, if the goal here is to sell, you want that customer to come in and feel loved, right? They want to feel like there's something going on there. Julian, this is, I know it's all soft tissue stuff, but this is so important.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I would just add that, I was at a major financial institution on Monday, and they were very, very clear with their top leaders to say, look, if we didn't have this workplace environment that we've created, right, that we continuously work on and continuously try to improve, we wouldn't have these financial results. So don't get it twisted, as they say. This is important for us to continue to focus on. That's why we spend as much time on this as we do talking about profitability and talk about our margins and our acquisition. So don't, we can't do one without, we recognize for our industry, our business, and the way that we approach customers, that we couldn't do this without. Maybe someone else feels differently, but we don't see that. We see that correlation very strong.
Well,
And Good.
when times get rough, those people are the ones that are going to help you keep it together, right? Your people, right? Regardless if you have, customers coming into your store or not, those are the people that are going to stand by you. Those are the people that are going to say, listen, we got you. We're going to cover, we'll cut down some of our hours because we know, you might not have enough to, cover an entire shift. So I'll take 5, you take 5. Those are, your people are the ones that are going to keep you driving the train, even though you might not have one of the wheels on that train, right? So regardless of, the amount of clients you have coming in, your people are the ones that are going to keep it going.
And look, I'm just talking from a customer standpoint, man, if I feel like that person that's working with me is really just, into it and just really is connected like that, that money's coming out of my wallet. I mean, it just is, you know what I'm saying? I mean, and let's be real. That's the environment, create the environment that you'd want to walk into, right? I mean, I've always heard that talked about.
I think, honestly, I think that's happened to all of us. We've gone to a store, and the salesperson is so great. And you're like, I really didn't want to buy anything, but I feel really, really bad. So
that's right.
They've been so awesome that I'm just going to buy. I can't buy everything. I'll just buy at least the one thing because you've been so awing.
That's Olga, I got to tell you something. That's when I also am somebody that'll write a great review. Or I just did this just in the last week. I've done this twice. Or I'm going to refer that, or I'm going to tell, that word of mouth, guys, that somebody that goes home and goes, God, I got to tell you this person I ran into today when I went into the store, that's the kind of stuff that is just where all the real success comes from. So we're talking about that, it's an intangible, but boy, it's awesome. But so now, and Olga, I'm going to throw this one at you, and Justin and Julian are going to go, yeah, I'm glad she got this question. So we've got this great place to work environment. We're putting all our efforts in this whole thing. And we get a team member who's really negative. We've got one that's gossiping about 2 other people. We've got somebody that on the sales floor to another salesperson is kind of bullying them through the process. So now you've got some bad actors that aren't really exemplifying this great place to work. What do you do?
Run. No, I'm just kidding. Well, first of all, that starts in the recruiting process, right? Once you establish your culture, what your values are, what you truly, your mission, your vision of your organization, you start that in the recruiting process. This is what we believe. This is our value. This is our mission. And you integrate that into every piece of the process, right? Into performance management, into, discussions. Someone was saying that they have a time in their meetings for, open-ended discussions. And you have a conversation with that person separately and say, listen, what's happening, what's going on. These are our values. You knew this before you started, or we've covered this during our process. Like, what's going on, what's happening? We see that you're struggling. We see that it's not going as maybe you've expected or we expected. And you're always going to have that. It's never going to be perfect. The important piece of that is to really just, again, address that head on. Don't let it simmer and sit, because that one person can start like damaging that department. And then from that department, it goes to another department. And then it becomes like this whole thing that you tried to achieve. And it took you years to get to a point of being that great place to work, just crumbled, within 6-7 months because you didn't tackle that person, in that moment. Kind of like children, right? When they do something, you got to like tell them in the moment, tackle it head on. And it's not an easy conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to happen.
So Justin, do you have to be prepared to, and it's a term that I've used forever, do you have to be prepared to bless and release? If it's one of those things where it's also realizing that not everybody's a fit, do you have to, even after this great onboarding process. If it's not working, do you need to make sure that you're able to make those hard decisions?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the one thing we always talk about, you are what you tolerate, and you bring someone in and, hey, it does this, it could be detrimental to the culture, and I mean, we've had situations where we have high performers and you hang on to that high performer and you're hoping they're going to make that turn, but, they're tearing down 4, 5, 6 people along the way, and you can't reward bad behavior, so it's that conversation. And, it's hard because when you care, it hurts. When you care
100%.
about people, you care this, and
100%.
yeah.
But I, one thing I've always said, and Julie, and I want to get your reaction to this. One way I've always looked at it is that you have to think about the whole, right? Am I respecting the entire team if I am, as Justin just said, if I'm allowing behavior? The way we say it here at HFA is you whatever you permit, you promote. So it's like, do you have to look at this as the whole when it comes to the Great Place, and just really realize that you just can't have exceptions when you've got a certain standard?
You do. I mean, people are very quick to see the discrepancy between what you say and what you do. So when we start off with the credibility, like managers' actions match their words is one of the statements on our Trust Index survey. And so if we say in our values that we promote respect for each other, we treat customers like this, and then you've got top performers, like you say, Justin, that aren't doing that, but they're getting results in the business and they're getting promoted in the business, or they're getting accolades in the business, people start to question not just that thing. Then it goes back to that first question. I need to know more. I don't understand what's happening here, because everything starts to fall down. So you do have to start with that big picture. It's tough. And one thing I have seen people do, two things I have seen people do. People sometimes, once you start having those conversations, as Olga mentioned, with those leading questions, it doesn't seem like maybe this is what you expected and what we expected. Sometimes they'll just self-select that they don't need to be here. So kind of getting in that question, it kind of maybe helps them kind of find their own off-ramp. The other thing I saw one company do a few years ago is they said, if for any reason in the first 8 weeks of you being here, you find that this is not the right place for you to be, we'll give you $2,000. And you could just be on your way. And so they would rather spend the $2,000 early and keep their culture versus spend 6, 7, 8 months of paying salary for someone who's actually putting a little destructive bug in there. So I've seen both of those things work, not every single time, but in terms of starting with the big picture, yes.
That's clever. Justin, I saw you smile on that one. That's kind of a unique approach, huh?
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great.
Because
So-
once you lose that trust, it's really hard to gain it back.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you took the time and the energy to get to a point where you are a great place to work, you build that trust with your team, that one little piece of behavior where you allow that high performer to get away with whatever they're getting away with, it just crumbles the whole thing. And then, kind of like a relationship, once you break the trust, it's going to be really hard to, gain that back. And it's more costly, which is probably why they rather give you the $2,000 than spend $15,000 later on trying to recover.
Well, and also when you offer that too, that's a credibility piece, right? You're basically saying that we feel confident that we're gonna let you understand if it's a fit or not, and if it's not, then we don't. We want you to understand that we're gonna, that we're gonna be okay with giving you a few bucks in your pocket, and we're gonna be friends when it's all over with. I mean, I think when you take the personalized aspect out of it, that's powerful. It's probably better for more people that don't use it than do. Okay, so toss-up question. I like to do these occasionally just to see who's feeling it. How often do you need to have staff bonding exercises or events? Or maybe I would even ask, do you need to have those? Throwing that out there.
I can take a little bit. So
Do it.
We try to do it once a quarter. Where like we just had a big kickball tournament outside of work, just, hey, non-meeting, this is just sign up outside at a park near the store. And we had this great, come together. The other thing we did too, just recently, is we did a features and benefits bowl. So we did this March Madness board. We took all the sales staff and we got a shot clock, 1 minute, as many features and benefits. We had a panel of 3, so there was no discrepancy on if it's a feature and benefit. And it was awesome. And our general manager, Alex, just put this whole thing together, and he called him in, this guy's 301 and this one's 301. And we did $500 to the winner with the belt. and it was basically like a 12-week breakdown, but it was so much fun, and the staff loved it because I mean, you had to come up and you do the features and benefits, and it was camaraderie, and when you get put on the spot, it gets a little bit tough, and
Mhm.
so that was one of those little things. But we've tried to take our meetings, because everything's been tougher and it's been tight, and hey, trying to get together outside, but we've tried to take that environment and bring it into the workplace and say, hey, what can we do different as a meeting that's going to bring the team together? That, like Pictionary, and putting them in teams and putting them against each other so that you can get that same benefit, but at work, and you don't have to plan this big event outside of work, even though those are good, but as much as possible on a daily basis to try to keep it going, and not so far and few in between.
I'll say, you do have to do it. I love how you said, Justin, you find the places where it makes sense, like if it's at a meeting, you definitely need to keep people engaged. I would say one other thing that people, I've seen companies utilize is that giving back to the community spirit. So even if we can't always, be together at a kickball tournament every quarter, if there's something happening in your city, in your region that you really, really care about, you want to contribute to, kind of rallying your employees and teams around giving back to your community or sponsoring a family in need, or that sort of a thing, is another way that people also feel this sense of like, we're doing something. Our mission lives outside of our doors, and that's another way that people find that sense of camaraderie, and that we can make this a great place to work.
And I also know a number of our retail members that they get feedback from their team as to events that they would like to see the company support. Doesn't mean the company is going to automatically do that, but having that ability to influence what the company does. There's even been I know some that have had, school events. They've said, let's have it in the store. And boy, you've got kids and moms coming in at a time when it's and dads, but at a time when they're also driving traffic. I mean, there's just ways to do this, but it was driven by the employees, which I thought was really, really, really cool. Olga, any thoughts about that as well?
I think also, kind of living what's happening in your surroundings as well. I know here in Florida, like we're really excited because like the Miami Heat and the Panthers are in the finals. So those are things that, they don't really cost you anything. They're just a matter of like, oh my God, like what team are you on? And, everyone's kind of talking of their teams and they wear the shirts, and I'm not into sports, so I don't really know, but I see them around with the teams and stuff, and it's cool, right? Because it's something that's happening. It's happening right now. It's active. You talk about the game last night or whatnot, and people feel like it's not just work, right? There's also a piece of like that family, that camaraderie, where people are talking about other things that are happening in their real life, in their life outside of work.
I also think the thing that Justin said that was also pretty brilliant is one of their methods was to have a game that caused their team to think about features and benefits. And so you're sitting there getting them grinding on stuff that might be important for them to know as they sell something. I'm just saying. Very cool. Here's an interesting question. And I'll toss this one up too for whoever wants to jump in first. All that we've talked about today, while it is overall and all encompassing, trust, respect, transparency, all of these things, is it more challenging, and are there nuances that our member companies need to consider department to department? Is it different front of house versus back of house? Warehouse, delivery, sales? I guess the question is really, there's not necessarily, or maybe there is, a one size fits all. That's, I think the question is, there's two decided aspects of all of our companies. Who wants to talk about that and how this adapts to both?
I'll jump in quick just because maybe I can use another industry to just show how it makes sense across industries. I had a client that's a major hospital chain, and they always have nurses week, they always have doctors week, or whatever they do for doctors, but people that are front of the house oftentimes get the credit. When you're the running back of a team, Olga, you might not know this, but when you're the running back or the quarterback, you get a lot of props, right? But when you're a lineman or you're not there, sometimes you don't get those props. So when you're behind the scenes, you do have to find special and unique ways to make sure you're bringing those people forward and help your front of house folks understand that what wouldn't be possible and what is possible because of these folks. So we had a group of folks that were medical billers. So they're the ones billing the insurance companies. They're often in a little, room at the bottom of the hospital. Don't get any
With
shine.
no windows.
No windows. It's just computers. It's hot down there. But they came up and said, hey, if it wasn't for us, none of this would work, right? And so they had to find a way to incorporate those contributions and bring those forward. So I would say yes. Sometimes your finance functions, sometimes the folks, like you said, warehouse, delivery, logistics, last line when it gets to the customer's house, they may not get the same shine as the person on the floor with the nice suit on and the jacket. But you have to find ways to pull those people up, because all of those experiences matter. And if you feel like you're left out, even though you're really important, that's damaging. It can damage trust, and it can make you kind of have to start to rebuild that. So that's what I would offer.
Okay.
And it varies, to your point, it varies per area and per department, even per location, because the demographics of those pieces of the puzzle are also different, right? You might have, for example, people in the warehouse, right? They might not know about, high-end things, right? Just because that's not what they're into. They're into, give them a pizza party. That's what they like, So I think you also have to, consider the demographics of what you're trying to achieve with that recognition and that support. It's not just one size fits all kind of situation, because, and again, you're not going to please every single employee, right? Because you can't customize it individually either. But you should have, a good group of people that, in every area, you kind of have something that's tailored to them, because again, every piece of that area is part of the bigger puzzle and is part of that clock. You can't work without that one little ring. Even if you think it's super tiny, it's still, the clock will not work, right? So you do have to take the time to recognize all the different areas.
Justin, what about y'all? Is there a nuance there between departments, areas of the company, and are there ways you have to sort of manage around those differences?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing battle. I think anyone from the warehouse to customer service, when you separate the buildings and all that, we had an issue where, like, on Saturdays we provide the staff a lunch. The warehouse is like, well, sales guys get everything. Well, the reason we do is so they don't leave, because the store's full of people, and and so what is it? Looking at it, do we need to do pizza, at the warehouse, so they feel included, and inclusion, and that's what's really helped with our weekly meetings, with all departments, from our operations manager, delivery, customer service, and the sales. And every Wednesday, we have an hour-long meeting. It could be 20 minutes, 30, but what issues, what's this, what's that? So they're included in the process and as a whole. And then, in the warehouse, like in the showroom, we have that championship belt, highest performer, biggest improvement gets the belt. Well, we got another one for the warehouse. So our operations manager can give it to the warehouse. Yeah, that's, if it's a picker, or if it's assembly, or if it's customer service, or if it's delivery. So they feel included in that process there as well. We can celebrate that when we go over there. But, the big thing, if I'm ever in the warehouse, or, or really in the management, we try to slow down. Hey, customer service, thank you. Because without you, we're in trouble. So everyone feels included. But it's a battle I think we'll always go through constantly, because sales gets this, warehouse gets that, and so just the awareness of it.
It's a great question. I mean, I think this is a great question, because
Yeah.
they are in some ways two different worlds, no matter how you try to bring them together. So I get that. I thought you were going to say for a second there, when you were talking about the belt for the warehouse, I was figuring it was one of those back support belts. Actually a working belt. But if you want to steal that idea, please do.
Hey, that's a great.
A bedazzled working belt.
Yes.
Okay, a bedazzled working belt coming from a modern furniture company in Florida. That makes total sense. I love that.
Right.
I love that. So here's and we have got time for one more toss-up question here, and I think this is pretty cool. It just says, how do you make a great place for a team when everyone has a different idea about what would make them happy? Great question, right? If you took all the suggestions, you would never have a culture because you'd be going 25 different directions. So who wants to take that one? How do you make a great place for a team when everyone has a different idea about what would make them happy?
What we always try to say is, look, we sit in a room, you got 10, 12, 20 people in the room. When you open it up, to the state, it's the most unbelievable ideas we've had is from other people in other departments. So we say, always give us your suggestions. It doesn't mean that we're going to implement it now, but that might go in this list of in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months, a year from now, man, so-and-so gave us this idea. Where's it at? I think the dumb idea is the one that's not suggested. Just give us what you got. We'll listen to it. Doesn't mean we're going to use it. If we sit there and go, that's stupid, you shut them down. So giving a voice, giving an opinion and saying, hey, thank you, for that. And then trying to take that and prioritize to what your business needs are, what you need, and then, go from there. Cause you get some crazy ones that you're just like, okay, yeah.
Well, and don't forget, some of the crazy ones are also from management. Management's not the place where only good ideas come from. What were you going to say, Julie?
I was going to say that, start, it's corny, but start with your values. Like, say, these are the things that are going to help us get there. Like we value everyone having their voices. And so we do that. And then always circle back with like kind of giving credit where it came from. I know most companies will say we will all get there as long as we get there together. Doesn't matter where the credit comes from, but people want to know that their contributions matter. So if you got a great idea and it came out of the warehouse, make sure you let them know, make sure that everyone understands that, and I think when you're trying to, collate all these different things for people, there is a certain sense of personalization. Like I have seen companies when they onboard new folks, they ask them a few questions like, what are your favorite snacks? What kind of gift cards do you like? And then, do you like to be recognized publicly or privately? Like even small ways of thinking about how you can try to personalize certain things you can. But overall, you want to make sure that you're just saying, look, we're doing this because this matters for our customer, and you did a really great job in living our values.
I think that's great. And how about this one? This just came in. How do you simplify your mission statement so that everyone can follow and believe in it? Do you need to put forward a mission statement? Do you need to put forward pillars? Let's talk about that real quick. And that's a great last question as we start to wrap up here. Olga, I'm going to let you jump in first.
I tend to like to keep it simple, right? Sometimes, we get into this whirlwind of this mission has to be like philosophical and it has to like inspire. Keep it simple. What is it that you want for your organization? It should be something that an 8th grader reads and gets it. It shouldn't have to be where you have to go to the dictionary and find out what these words mean to figure out what the mission is. But
real quick for a clarification, and we're talking about here, this is something internal, right? We're not talking about something that you got to, have your PR team work on we're talking about internal here. Is that the way you're reading that question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Because again, the more you try to put in it, then everyone has their own philosophy or definition of what that means. And then that's where the other question you had about everyone has different things is because
100%.
We made it so difficult that everyone's trying to think, what does that mean? If you keep it simple,
it.
everyone knows that's what it is.
Do you know what my mantra is, Olga? True story. You can go on my LinkedIn. Don't turn common sense into rocket science. Seriously, Justin, what do you think about that as well? I mean, should there be an internal, some sort of a mission statement or something that you can point to?
I think really honestly, Olga, answered that the best, keeping it simple. This is what it is. This is what we're doing, and you don't get complicated, like she said. I don't think you could have answered that any better.
Okay. Julian, any final thoughts on that one?
I agree. I mean,
she just nailed it. Olga just nailed it, right?
Yeah.
She threw drop the mic, done. Nothing else needs to be said.
All-star.
And by the way, before I quickly wrap up here, I just have to point out, and I just love giving people a view behind the curtain, but I just want everybody to know that everybody that knows Olga will tell you that she doesn't talk this expressively with her hands, but there's a motion detector in that office that when she doesn't move, that screen goes black. And so I've just been loving it because I've been catching these little things. I've said, wow, she wasn't this expressive when we talked earlier. I love
Trying to keep the lights on, literally.
I love it, but it's just like, yeah, we're going all over the place. I want to remind everybody that if you go to myhfa.org/webinar, you're going to absolutely get a lot of great content. And even better than that, we have a lot when it comes to employee retention. So do you see the address there? go.myhfa.org/retention. And you're going to get a lot more related to this subject. But like I said, the entire collection, myhfa.org/webinar. I want to thank our guests. What a great panel. This was an absolute blast, but super important. We had one person that was with us today that said they've just got a pad full of takeaways and they can't wait to talk to their team. And that's what this is all about. That makes me happy. So my heartfelt thanks to Julian Lute, Senior Manager and Strategic Advisor for Great Places to Work, Justin Padden, Director of Sales and Training for Georgia Furniture Mart, and Olga Tua, Human Resource Director for El Dorado Furniture. I want to thank the three of you so much. This has been super helpful. And I think a lot of people are going to have takeaways that are going to really help them with their business, particularly as we continue through these disruptive times that are probably going to be with us for quite some time. What I always like to do at the end of every webinar is wish everybody good health and great sales. On behalf of everybody here at HFA, I'm Mark Schumacher. We will see you next time. Take care.